Okay, hi everybody. David Fogel back with you again, CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, and we've got another Symphonina Foundation podcast for you. I just got finished with the mix for Christopher Reed's movement number 3, which is the last movement of his Symphonina number 2, which was one of the winners in our 2024 Symphonina contest and will be on our album coming up. And since Chris is right here with me, we decided we're going to do a podcast interview right now to capture the moment. We both have goosebumps on our arms, even though Chris has heard this piece probably 1,000 times. I've only heard it about 100 times now. But every time I get to the end of that movement 3, it's awesome. And congratulations, Chris. I mean, you just composed a great bit of work. So
Well, thank you very much.
well done. Chris was also the inaugural winner of our Best Symphonina of the Year competition from 2022 on our album Introducing the Symphonina. And we greatly appreciate you being there at the beginning with your original submission to us, which was great too, and made number 10 on the Billboard charts. And we'll have to see how we do this year. Chris, you're up in you're up in the Seattle area. Tell us a little bit about how you got into composing and why you are known as the Barefoot Composer.
I specifically have loved film music for just about all my life. One of my favorite stories of my parents from when I was young was I used to crawl and put my head on speakers when they were playing film music. And when I was about 2, I actually asked my mom to turn off the John Barry's soundtrack to Somewhere in Time because I felt it was too sad and I didn't want to didn't want to listen to that at that point.
Yeah.
Um, but that's always been a big part of my life. It's always been a big interest. And going through school, that just grew and grew. My senior year project in high school was an arrangement for my school's band. And then in college, I decided to try to make a go of a living as a composer and declared that as my major. And the rest is sort of history. Grad school at Seattle Film Institute, which I mean that program is incredible, and actually the Pacific Northwest Film Scoring Program just spun out of that and became its own program. So highly recommend that. So the Barefoot Composer thing.
Yeah, what's that about?
So since senior year of high school, I have chosen as much as possible to go without shoes. Part of it's for health reasons, part of it's for some religious reasons, comfort, and that's just sort of become my brand. A lot of people who know me get sort of weirded out if they do happen to see me in the rare instances where I have shoes on outside of work.
Oh my
Um,
goodness.
so yeah, it's just I feel more me when I'm barefoot. I feel more connected with the earth around me. I have decided to carry that forward into sort of how I present myself to the world.
Well, it's a very welcoming picture in my mind, actually. So I think that's great. Now, if I remember correctly, you are a percussionist. Do I remember that
Yes.
correctly? Yeah. Okay. Good. So, did you play before we get to percussion? Do you play any other instruments as well, or is it mainly percussion?
Um, Mainly percussion, but I also play some
Mhm.
piano-ish. I sing. Did a few seasons with the Seattle Symphony Chorale, which was a blast.
Very nice.
And then I sort of dabble here and there. I'm sort of a utility. Mainly, my wife is a music teacher, and whenever she has an ensemble, it's like, we don't have trombone this year. Can you learn trombone? Sure, why not?
Wow.
So, so am I good at those particular instruments? No, but I know enough to get myself in trouble. I'll say that.
That's great. Okay, so you have one up on me. I do play a lot of instruments, but I have never blown any brass instruments at all. Actually, the saxophone doesn't count, so it's woodwind. So what? I guess I have multiple questions on that. Then, so
Sure.
in your experience as a percussionist first, and then going to other instruments, I suspect it's different than being a piano player going to other instruments or being a cellist and going to other instruments because you don't have too many things that have pitch, although you have xylophone and marimba and you have other things in the percussion
Mhm.
type of vibraphone. They have you hit them, they have pitch. And I guess
Yep.
glockenspiel's probably in there, and celeste you probably are in there too, and as a percussionist, I'm guessing. So you probably do have something for that. But is it harder for a percussionist to make the switch to go to a, let's call it a tonal instrument for the lack of a better term that's coming to mind, or what's the story?
So my experience with that is maybe a little bit different than a lot of percussionists in that when I started percussion, I also started teaching myself piano at the same time. And from day one, I've had much more of an interest in melodic percussion than like things like snare drum, bass drum, things like that. I obviously
Hmm.
still do play those, but I sort of consider myself most proficient at mallet instruments, timpani, things like that, where a lot of percussionists just sort of ignore those because they feel like it's too difficult, I guess, to think about rhythm and pitch at the same time,
Mm.
which I that doesn't hold a lot of water for me because everyone else has to do that, so why don't we?
Yeah.
Um, but so having that background in more melodic, more tonal instruments, more along that spectrum of percussion, I think has really made it easier to switch out into all the other instruments.
Yeah. Did you take any lessons in piano or other instruments along the way, or are you basically self-taught on those guys?
Mainly self-taught. I did take some like group piano classes in college just because that was a requirement for my major. But other than that, and other than 1 year of like a crash course in a bunch of different
Hmm.
instruments through the music education program in
Hmm.
college, I'm self-taught in everything other than percussion.
It's great. I two things to say. One, back when we recorded your piece, part of the International Symphony Orchestra performance, we had Lindsay Sacken on percussion, and she was local here at San Diego State University,
Hmm,
where I am in San Diego, and I got to actually record her for all those parts. And
nice.
and then being so impressed with her, I also had her record some other things for me on a jazz piece I was working on, where she had to do vibraphone and pretty quick passages I had written for her, and she's just
Mhm.
nailing them. And I'm like, wow, when you come, every instrument's hard. Every instrument is hard to master. Whatever it
Yes.
is. But sometimes you watch someone and you just like, I don't know. For me, I just get amazed at what people do on various instruments, and don't want to take anything for
Mhm.
granted. So even you're just hitting something, but boy, if you got to hit something in the right way and on time in the groove, don't miss a mallet, don't miss one of those little keys, whatever you call them. Like,
It's funny you mentioned that. So the reason I got into percussion specifically was I started in music formally in seventh grade. And that year, my middle school had cut the beginning band. And so I had registered for that. They dumped me in the intermediate band. And so, first day of classes, my teacher said, "Okay, so what do you play?" Like, well, I don't. And so we talked after class, and she said, "Okay, so is there anything that you're interested in playing?" And I said, "Well, I want something that it would be easy for me to catch up to the other kids on. So let's go with percussion."
hmm well,
Oops.
yeah, I mean, it's hard. Well, okay. There's a rather infamous video of Leonard Bernstein talking with a triangle player that I'm sure you might know. I think you probably
Mhm.
do, where they're having a discussion about how to hit the thing. But it's hard to actually. God, I have so much respect for everybody who's playing symphonic orchestra instruments and playing them at that level. It's just incredible what you guys can do. It's just really great. How does that translate as being a composer? I know, Chris Prather on our team is a percussionist, and Gary Gray, of course, is a percussionist, and
Mhm.
everybody comes to composing from different perspectives. I'm just wondering, I've heard a lot studying film composition of how John Williams's journey in, being a jazz pianist first and then coming to film scoring
Oh yeah, yeah.
affected his approach. But I'm curious,
Hmm.
when you come in with rhythm, let's say, as your first thing, is that what you're thinking about generally first in composition? Or did they teach that out of you in the Seattle Film School and you have a different approach?
So, funnily enough, that has never really factored into it much, other than a lot of my first compositions tended to be for percussion instruments or percussion adjacent. Like I wrote several pieces for my handbell choir in college, things like that. But I think what has shaped my process more is my love of melody, which is why I was drawn to the melodic instruments more to begin with.
Yeah.
So my being a percussionist kind of bleeds out into my music a little bit with interesting uses of percussion, especially in my film scores, because I know some of the instruments that I can put in digitally that not everyone has. Like I use a lot of like stone marimba, glass marimba, and a lot of sort of weird off the wall percussion instruments that create really cool textures that you wouldn't necessarily readily find in the concert world.
I remember you submitted your first Symphonina to us as part of that contest back in 2022.
Hmm.
And I was happy to get as many submissions as we did because we were brand new, you know. So how did you
Hmm.
find us? I forget.
I, how did I find you?
Well, I'm glad we found
I
you,
think,
but
yeah.
how'd you find us?
So I think that my wife probably found because you had a pretty significant push for social marketing
We did.
um, campaign there. So my wife has always been a huge champion of my music, and she keeps an ear on the ground for opportunities like that and passes them my way. And I think that's what happened there. She found one of your posts online and said, "Hey, I think this would be up your alley." And I took a look at it and I was like, yeah, absolutely it would. And the rest is history.
Yeah, okay, well, we've had a little time to live with symphoninas now, you and me.
Mhm.
What's your feeling on them?
I love it. I really, so one of my favorite classical formats is the symphony, but it's so hard to be able to just listen to a symphony. Like it's more possible to listen like a movement when you're on the go or something like that. But, we don't always have the time or the attention span to sit down and listen to a 45-minute work. And to get that compressed down into a more digestible time frame, I think that's a really, really great thing. I think it acts, not only is it amazing by itself, because I mean, at this point, I mean, how many symphoninas are out there in the world? And, all of them so enjoyable. But they also act as sort of like a primer into the world of classical music
Yeah.
at large. So I think it serves a dual purpose. That is really, really a great thing for the music community and the world.
And for you, you're good at writing.
Yes.
You're good at writing them. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
that. I appreciate that too. You know, I think we've had, at least that I know, I've submitted to our competitions over the years more than 80, might be 85 or so symphoninas
Nice.
composed in the past 3 years. And of course, I don't know what people do outside of the contest unless they let me know. So
Right.
if you happen to be listening and you're composing a symphonina or you have already and it's out there, please feel free to let me know. I'd be happy to listen to it. And I do think that we've lucked into something, and it's catching on, which is great. So, and of course, making Billboard charts twice is good too,
Yeah, it doesn't hurt.
and hopefully we'll continue to do that and keep the recognition going. We also were fortunate last year to have some of the music on our album played on Wisconsin Public Radio and other places. We'll see if we can continue to explore for different opportunities like that. And so now, Chris, that we've got the mixing almost completely finished, we just have a little bit of final touches to do, but I would say we're pretty much done. We move on to
Mhm.
mastering and we get the album out. What are you going to be doing for the rest of the summer and the fall and the winter? And what's your next project?
So I am continuing work on a video game score. Some of my friends and I are developing a game that is hopefully, fingers crossed, going to be releasing later this year. We'll see how that works, but
Okay.
but that's the plan currently. And on the more performance side of things,
Mhm.
I'm going to be co-music directing and likely performing in a musical this summer, Anne of Green Gables, which I'm really excited about. And then Symphonina number 3 is around the corner.
That's good. So, and that's all in the Seattle area?
Hmm.
Yeah, just recently I was speaking with Lauren Zoller, who's cellist with us in the International Symphonina Orchestra and performed on Alex Unseth's Symphonina that we're going to be including on the album that you're on too for this
Hmm.
coming up. And she's in the Seattle area, as I mentioned, and she's working with the Seattle Chamber Music Society. You
Nice.
you may know of that society, and if not,
I
then
do.
I want to. Okay, great. I want to get you guys together, and you never know what would happen there. It'd be a good synergy, I think. And
Excellent.
if you have as you're coming up to dates of performances or stuff that you can let us know, anything you're doing, we'll be more than happy to help promote that. Appreciate that. How about other compositional? So, in terms of the video game thing, is your compositional load on that very high, or are you taking on other projects from people? Do you do commission work? What's your strategy when it comes to music?
I do commission work. I don't currently have anything else in the works right now other than the video game and working on Symphonina No. 3
Thank you.
when I can. The video game, it comes in waves. Every once in a while, I'll get a message saying, "Hey, we need a theme for, X, Y, and Z. Can
Mhm.
you knock that out?" And then sometimes it'll be a few weeks and I don't hear anything.
Mhm.
But the fact that this is a group of my friends that most of us have known each other for a while, the camaraderie, and I sort of like have input on art direction and some story stuff. They give feedback on music, so everyone sort of kind of has a finger in everything. So it's really a group effort more than you do X, you do Y, things like that. So yeah, it ebbs and flows, but there's always something.
Yeah. Do you find it easy to transition from one compositional project to another while you're managing multiple things, or are you more the kind of person who, once you're into one thing, you want to see that through to the end before you divert to something else?
Depends on how close I am to finishing. While I'm like, for lack of a better term, like in the weeds on several projects, I will switch up between several, just sort of like put something on the back burner for a while, and take a look at something else with fresh eyes, and sort of switch those up. And more often than not, when I'm working on one, suddenly I'll have an idea for the other and jot that down, move back. And so that's sort of how I keep the creative juices flowing on multiple projects at once. But if it's something that's like I'm so close to finished, I just really gotta knock that out, then I'll drill down into that one and finish it out.
I think a lot of people I know who are multitaskers like that, if they're very good at it, then they can stick to the project deadlines or
Hmm.
timelines anyway, if there aren't any deadlines.
Hmm.
But I think those who are less skilled at it, let's say, tend not to finish things, but keep starting new things,
Yes.
right? And
Yeah.
especially, I think that's an easy, I guess, trap is the word to use
Yeah,
for
that
someone
is
who's
definitely
creative,
a
like a
pitfall.
composer.
Yeah.
You're always having new melodies. I'm sure you do. I do. I'm humming into
Yep.
myself all the time as I'm walking down the street, and
Yep.
people look at me funny. But I have my phone. I'm humming into the phone, trying to remember and then parse later what it was that I was humming because I'm a terrible hummer. It, but I think it's a matter of managing all those new ideas and when do you want to pick them up and
Yep.
actually have something that's one produced thing instead of 10 unproduced fragments, right? So, do you have a
Yep.
strategy along those lines, or does it just come naturally to you?
So I, after having a lot of ideas come and completely go by the time I, find my computer again or something like that, I decided that I was going to bring a music journal around with me. I always have one in my bag. And so I'm always jotting down little fragments of melodies, things like that. And that served me really well because if I need an idea, I'm able to leaf back through that and find something that I can plug in. So the melody for movement one of Symphonina No. 1, I had been kicking around since 2014,
Mm-hmm.
and finally found a place I was like, oh, that would be perfect. And there it was.
Yeah, it's good to
Um,
keep these things for a long time, isn't it? If you have them,
yep,
if you like them, right? Yeah.
yeah. And there's one melody that I wrote in 20, I want to say 2010, that I'm just waiting. I have this great idea of the kind of thing that it would be perfect for. I just haven't stumbled across that project yet. So it's waiting in the wings, and I'm excited to be able to use it. But I have a whole list of those that I'm able to sort of just like call up on the fly.
Yep. I do want to ask you before we go here. We we had the wonderful experience about 3 weeks ago of recording your music with the Budapest Scoring Orchestra with Peter
Hmm.
Eleni conducting, and they're always excellent. We have them for three of the five compositions that are going to be on our album this year. And as I think you know, I was traveling in Maui with my wife for vacation while we were doing that,
Yes.
and we weren't going to
Yeah.
do it on that day. We were going to do it. I think it was on April 15th or something,
Hmm.
but they had told us for scheduling purposes that it was probably going to be like 2:30 in the morning Pacific time if we were going to stick to that. So can we move it up? So I was like, okay, we'll do it, So I wake up and got the laptop up and, here we are, you're on, we're all on. And I just want to ask you, like, what is, I mean, for me now, I can ask this, I can answer this myself too, but it's different for everybody. And I want to know what it is for you. What is it like for you as the composer when you're there? You're not in the room with everybody, but essentially you are, and they're recording your music.
It's difficult to just it's difficult to speak, apparently. It's difficult to describe the feeling, just the sense of just chills and goosebumps that you get, and the sense of accomplishment. It is a really good feeling to know that these people are performing something that you created. I don't know that there's really any other experience quite like it, and it's also really, it was a really good experience for me to be in the booth, quote unquote, albeit virtually, as most of my experience with recording sessions I've been conducting, and that's another just incredible experience in and of itself. So it's I don't know, the current director of the Pacific Northwest Film Scoring Program always posts whenever they're doing a recording session, and the comment is always, "Session days are best days," and that's true. I mean, that's just true. There's no experience quite like it.
I agree. And when we got done with the first sight reading session, because again, Budapest Scoring is sight reading everything. So Peter has them lined up, and we go and we have the first movement played from start to finish. Let them have a good précis of what the whole thing is about. And Peter stops and it's like, okay, what do you think? And I remember your first comment is like, that was so much fun. And I agree with you. And then I'm thinking it is, but we've got to give them some critical remarks right now. So
yes, yeah,
the fun only lasts for about 5 seconds, and then we've got to get right on to, okay, what is it that we heard that we want to have played differently or change up? So it's I kind of liken it. I have done this before to launching a rocket ship. You have all the preparation. You put it all together, you check the score multiple times, you still have mistakes sometimes. I sure do. And then you get there and you launch it, and hopefully it goes the way you want, but you can do these course corrections while it's going to space, right? So
yes.
And especially since they're sight reading it, it's just a tribute to their degree of skill. And also then, we get the recordings back from every microphone in that room, and we have to put them together and make it sound as good or better than they played it, right? So there are these various challenges, but I do want to remind ourselves and anybody else who's in the situation of recording with a live orchestra like that you have to appreciate the fun and the special moment that it is. There's so few people who get to record with a live orchestra in this world, and it is really a special thing not to be taken for granted. And then, of course, you got to be critical, and you got to say, what is it that we need to do differently on the next take, and to get it all done in the time that we have. And I can tell everybody that, we played down to the last second of our session, and actually we did end up using that last take, Chris. It's in there, so I'm glad we have it. And and again, thank you to Peter and Belinda and everybody at the Budapest Scoring Orchestra who's been great working with us. We appreciate you all.
Definitely.
And we'll be definitely playing with them again in the future. Chris, if people want to get in touch with you, what's the best way to do that?
My website, christopherreedmusic.com. Just drop me a line there.
Okay, you got a contact page there. You can just pull down and send you a little forum email or something.
Yep.
All right, that sounds good. Well, we're going to listen to some more of your good music on the way out here. And I know you and I are going to be in touch very, very shortly, because we've got mastering sessions to do as we prepare for the release of the album, probably out in early July. And then we'll see what we can do to help you further. And I do want to say, as CEO of the Symphonina Foundation, it was our pleasure to be able to help finance that recording session with you with Budapest. Just really, it's a joy for me and everybody in the foundation to live up to our mission of spreading the joy of symphonic music to young audiences around the world. And it's great to have you part of that.
Thank you very much. It's an honor. It really is.
No, thank you, Chris. All right. You take care.
You too.